All right, so I took the motor out of the Doodlebug. Normally, the sprocket is right here, and it has the chain that comes back and turns the back wheel. So that sprocket would be attached to the output shaft of the motor. All right, this guy will spin, and it'll spin the sprocket, and it'll spin the chain. That little sprocket is right here. So there's the little teeth that will get hooked onto the chain. It slides on there. It's gonna turn with this. Just turn the chain, turn the back wheel. So on this side of the motor, as we can see, normally there's a cover here. Inside of this is the piston that goes back and forth. So right here, we have the exhaust, which is what the muffler right here goes to. Muffler goes over the exhaust so it doesn't sound super loud. But on the exact opposite side, we have the intake. So the carburetor is normally mounted on here. It brings in air and pulls in gas from the gas tank. That comes in on this side. It would go out on this side after combustion inside of here. So we look inside, this will come in once the valve lets in air and gas. So we look inside here. Here we have two valves, intake valve, exhaust valve. How do I know that? Intake valve, intake. See, it's right there. Exhaust valve, exhaust. It's right there. So this is considered the head. This other hole is where the spark plug would go through that piece. So when the engine is running, this will be moving. The piston will go down. The intake valve is open. This will open, let in gas and air. It will come back up, compress it. Spark plug, which is right here, will fire. It causes the gas and air to catch on fire. Boom, pushes the piston back down. And then the exhaust valve will open. How does it do all that? I'll show you that next. So it'll come back up. While the exhaust valve is open, it's pushing all the exhaust air out. As soon as that happens, the exhaust valve will close, intake valve will open. It'll pull in the air and the gas. Then the intake valve will close. Both of these are closed. Comes up, combustion, spark happens, boom, pushes this piston back down. Then the exhaust valve opens, piston comes up, pushes all the exhaust out. The exhaust valve closes over and over. That's basically how this works. That's why it's 4 strokes, because it'll start up here. 1 stroke down is it letting in the air. Then 2 strokes, it's coming up. Combustion, boom, 3 strokes, and now it's opening the exhaust valve, pushing the air out. 4 strokes. So that's how that works. We can move the exhaust pipe out of the way. So how do these valves right here know when to open and close? So this is actually a push rod motor, which these little rods actually go in to the internal of the motor. This will come back and it basically will push on these guys, which will open and close the valves, because those little rods actually come through those little holes on the bottom. You can see the holes there. So if I slide it on, they would slide over it, and I'll touch the back side of this. Open close of the intake valve, and then open close of the exhaust valve. So how do these guys know when to open? If we go in here, which let me grab my light so we can see a little bit better. You can see we got a bunch of gears, but here on the output shaft, it's connected to the crankshaft, which is what this is. This guy right here is actually going to the piston. You can see this big metal piece goes straight in with that guy. And if we look over here, like we already saw before, when this guy turns, and I'm spinning it over here, piston's going up and down, up and down. So I go over here, you'll see the crankshaft is actually pulling that lighter metal piece right here around in a circle. The piston's going down, and it comes back, and the piston starts going up. Piston's going down, up and down. So that's the crankshaft. The crankshaft right here is going to be connected to the output shaft, because that's actually what is turning the gear to turn the chain. I pull out this other piece, which there's a gear on the crankshaft. There's this other gear right here that I can pop out. Now this is the camshaft. You see these little lobes on here. See how there's two? One of them's gonna be intake, the other one's gonna be exhaust. And that is exactly how it times the intake and the exhaust. While the motor is spinning, the crankshaft is turning, and then it's turning this little gear, and then these little lobes. So you'll see this guy's pointing up. When it finally gets all the way to the end, it's pushing on these little rods, which there you go. You can see it right there. It'll push the rod out on this side, which like we said before, will eventually push on this and push it down to open the intake valve. Then it'll keep on cranking around until this little lobe, see how this piece is bigger? You can kind of see the shape of it. It just kind of sticks out on the one side right here. This one has the same shape, the exhaust lobe. So I can kind of show it better this way, right there. So when it finally gets to the tip of this, it's pushing on this little rod right here, which has the same thing. It comes up here and pushes in and out, and it's opening and closing the exhaust valve. So crankshaft attached to the actual piston that goes back and forth, and then camshaft is just opening and closing these valves. So if I push on it from behind, you can see that it actually opens, lets the exhaust out. And then if I push on the other one, that's the intake valve. It's actually letting the air in, air and gas, of course, from the carburetor. So it'll go air in, close, bang, piston goes down, piston comes up, air out, exhaust. And the exhaust air goes right out of the exhaust pipe right here and goes right into the muffler, which I showed you before that took off. So that is essentially how these little gas motors work. And the same thing for in your car, just with more pistons. Because this is only a 1 cylinder. This is the cylinder. The piston is what slides in and out of the cylinder.